When I moved into the Willow Glen community with my younger brother Kyle, I wasn't expecting a fight. All I wanted was a peaceful place where he could finally feel comfortable. Kyle is 28, paralyzed from the waist down after a horrific car accident 3 years ago, and I promised myself that when I bought a house, it would be one where he could roll freely, live independently, and breathe without being pitied. The day we moved in, I was more excited for him than for myself. He'd picked his room, chosen the paint color, and even helped me design the ramp that would let him enter the front door with ease. That ramp wasn't just an accommodation, it was a promise. A sleek, professionally installed concrete and metal structure that blended perfectly into the house's aesthetic and met every code in the book. The trouble began the same afternoon we arrived. She was there before the moving truck left. Karen. You know the type, mid-50s, stiff posture, hair pulled into a too-tight bun, and a permanent scowl that seemed etched into her bones. She wore beige like it was a threat. She introduced herself not with a welcome or a handshake, but with a question. Is that going to stay? She was pointing at the ramp. I blinked, confused. Yeah, it's a wheelchair ramp. Kyle, just behind me, smiled politely and rolled forward. Karen didn't smile back. She didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on the ramp like it had personally insulted her. It's just a little much for the street, she said. I mean, this is a quiet community. Visual cohesion matters here. I wanted to believe she was just awkward. Maybe she didn't mean it how it sounded. But Kyle's smile dropped. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. We both knew exactly what she meant. She didn't see a ramp. She saw an eyesore. And worse, she saw my brother as an inconvenience. That smirk she gave when she said visual cohesion, it wasn't just a throwaway phrase. It was a warning shot, one I should have paid more attention to. Over the next week, Karen made herself present. She walked her dog past our house twice a day, phone in hand, snapping photos of the ramp from different angles. Once I caught her crouching in the bushes across the street like a dollar store paparazzo. Kyle started closing the blinds more. He joked that he felt like a zoo animal. I laughed, but I didn't find it funny. Then came the notes. At first, they were slipped under our door, unsigned, typed, passive-aggressive masterpieces. Some residents have expressed concern about structural changes that disrupt neighborhood symmetry. Another one read, community standard features are encouraged over institutional-looking modifications. I scanned the HOA rules 3 times. There was no policy against ramps. In fact, the Fair Housing Act made it illegal to prohibit them. But that didn't stop Karen. She escalated fast. A formal notice arrived via certified mail. The letterhead bore the HOA's seal, and the tone was cold, bureaucratic, and unapologetic. Your home has been found in violation of Article 6, Section B, unauthorized external additions. They were demanding the removal or restyling of the ramp to better conform to neighborhood standards. I nearly laughed until I saw the threat. Failure to comply would result in escalating fines beginning at $150 per day. I called the number listed. It went straight to voicemail. Kyle sat silently across the room as I read the letter out loud. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he asked, "You think I'm too much for them?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm down the street and confront Karen directly. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I documented everything. The letter, the photos, the timestamps of Karen walking by. I printed the emails. I saved the text messages from neighbors, some sympathetic, some disturbingly quiet. I installed a Ring camera facing the street, and then one day Karen gave me the match I needed to light the fuse. She walked by, saw Kyle on the porch, and said, loud enough for the Ring camera to catch, "It's just a shame that has to be the first thing people see when they drive in." The camera got everything, her face, her tone, and Kyle's stunned reaction. I watched the footage 3 times. Then I uploaded it to a private drive and shared it with a few friends. One of them, an editor at a popular disability advocacy blog, asked if they could share it publicly. I hesitated. Kyle watched it again and said, "Let her see what real discomfort feels like." So we said yes. Within 48 hours, that video would change everything. But back then, I was still just a guy with a ramp, a brother, and one very powerful enemy who had no idea how badly she just messed up. The video of Karen's comment, cold, dismissive, and laced with contempt, spread fast. At first, it was just a few hundred shares. Then a local news anchor retweeted it with the caption, "Disability ramp called an eyesore." What century are we in? From there, it was like someone had broken open a dam. People were angry, rightfully so. The comments poured in by the hundreds. That woman should be ashamed. Is this even legal? What kind of HOA fines someone for giving their brother access to his home? It wasn't viral yet, but it was bubbling, and Karen had no idea what was coming. But while the internet rallied behind us, Karen was busy digging her heels in. The day after the video hit 5,000 shares, I received another letter from the HOA. This one signed personally by Karen, now identifying herself as acting compliance director. The letter accused me of deliberately misrepresenting the character of the HOA and warned that further public dissemination of internal disputes could be grounds for legal action under the HOA's defamation clause. I nearly laughed. You can't defame someone when all you've done is show people what they actually said. I posted the letter online. That was the match. Overnight, the story exploded. It was picked up by a national disability rights organization. A TikTok with 2 million followers stitched it. "So let me get this straight," the creator said. "Karen wants a disabled man to crawl into his house because the ramp offends her HOA aesthetics?" The video hit 6 million views by lunchtime. By evening, Karen was trending under the hashtag #ramp rights. That's when the real pressure started to mount. News vans parked down the block. A local reporter came by and asked to interview Kyle. He was hesitant at first. He didn't like being in the spotlight. But after watching Karen strut down the street like nothing happened, he said, "Yeah, let's talk." He did the interview from his wheelchair, right at the base of the ramp, the sun casting long shadows through the trees as he explained what it felt like to have your independence treated like graffiti. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just told the truth. It was powerful. The footage aired on the evening news. That same night, someone left flowers on our porch with a note that said, "You're seen. You're respected." Karen, meanwhile, cracked. She began posting in the community Facebook group. Her tone was hysterical, her arguments unhinged. She called the video heavily edited, accused me of activist manipulation, and claimed the ramp was clearly installed without architectural oversight. She even accused Kyle of milking sympathy. She posted blurry screenshots of our yard, circled them in red, and captioned it, "Not in compliance." One neighbor finally commented, "Karen, you need to stop. You're embarrassing yourself and us." Another wrote, "The only thing not in compliance is your humanity." Undeterred, Karen escalated further. She called an emergency HOA board meeting to vote on a proposal titled, "Motion to Demand Full Architectural Review and Conditional Removal of Unauthorized Home Modifications." I was required to attend. It felt like a setup. Still, I showed up. I wore a suit. Kyle came too in his chair, wearing a black t-shirt that simply said, "Access is not optional." When we walked into the room, you could feel the tension crackling. Half the board looked mortified. The other half looked like they wanted to vanish. Karen opened the meeting with a full PowerPoint presentation. I'm not kidding. She titled it, "Preserving Neighborhood Integrity in the Face of Unregulated Change." Her slides were pixelated screenshots of the ramp, graphs with no data, and a bizarre collage of ADA ramps from prisons and public schools. Her argument being that our ramp gave the home an institutional appearance. One slide was titled, "The Psychology of Disorder." I watched the room turn against her in real time. Even her allies looked nauseated. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I pulled out my copy of the Fair Housing Act, passed it around, and read aloud. "It is unlawful to refuse to permit, at the expense of the person with a disability, reasonable modifications of existing premises, if such modifications are necessary to afford such person full enjoyment of the premises." Then I showed them the permits. City approval, architectural stamps, engineering signatures. I showed them the date-stamped photos, the inspection certificate, And finally, I showed them the letter from our civil rights attorney outlining exactly how much they'd owe if they continued this campaign of harassment. Karen tried to interrupt. The HOA president stopped her cold. Karen, I think we've heard enough. The board voted unanimously. The motion was denied. The fines were rescinded. Karen was asked to step down from her interim role, pending further review. She stormed out without a word, heels clacking like a gavel. Kyle and I walked home in silence until he said, "Do you think that's it?" I said, "No," because this story wasn't just local anymore. And Karen didn't know it yet, but she wasn't dealing with a neighbor anymore. She was dealing with the whole country. The moment Karen stormed out of that HOA meeting, she became more than just a neighborhood tyrant. She became a symbol, and not the kind you want on a mug or a tote bag. She became the walking embodiment of everything wrong with unchecked power, rigid bureaucracy, and performative control disguised as community care. The video of the HOA meeting, filmed by a neighbor who couldn't believe what he was witnessing, hit the internet like a brick through a glass door. People didn't just sympathize, they rallied. Disability advocacy groups, legal experts, even veterans groups, some of whom had seen similar discrimination, began reposting and responding to the video, calling out the injustice and demanding accountability. I woke up to hundreds of messages. My inbox was flooded. Offers of pro bono legal representation, requests for interviews. Kyle's face was everywhere. And through it all, Karen had no clue how much damage she'd already done to her own cause. What she did next only accelerated her fall. She filed a cease and desist letter, not through the HOA, but from a private attorney she'd hired using her own money, accusing Kyle and me of defamation, slander, and harassment of a board member. She gave us 48 hours to take down every video, post, and comment or face legal action. I laughed for a full minute. Then I sent it straight to our attorney. His reply? "I hope they sue. Let's bury them in discovery." But we didn't just respond with a legal letter. We went public again. I tweeted a photo of the letter with the caption, "She mocked a disabled man's ramp, lost the fight legally, and now wants to sue us for telling the truth." This is the face of compliance. It exploded. National outlets picked it up. CNN, NBC, The Washington Post. Suddenly we were doing interviews in the front yard. Kyle was hesitant at first. He didn't want to become some token of inspiration. But when a young man with muscular dystrophy messaged him saying, "I showed my landlord your story, and now I'm getting my ramp," he said, "Okay, let's go." Meanwhile, Karen's world started crumbling. HOA sponsors pulled out of their upcoming charity event. The neighborhood Facebook group turned into a war zone. Someone leaked screenshots of Karen ranting in a private message thread, calling Kyle a media parasite and our ramp a prop for sympathy. That thread made the front page of Reddit within hours. We didn't leak it, but we didn't stop it either. The best part? A viral TikTok creator who reenacts HOA horror stories did a dramatic reading of Karen's violation letter. Dressed in a gray wig, glasses, and holding a plastic wine glass, she delivered lines like "visual cohesion is non-negotiable" with Oscar-worthy flair. It hit 4.2 million views. The top comment? "Imagine your legacy being the lady who tried to evict a ramp." But this wasn't just internet noise. Behind the scenes, the real fight was brewing. Our lawyer filed an official complaint against the HOA for discrimination under the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Department of Housing and Urban Development responded within 48 hours. So did the ACLU. Both opened inquiries. It went from neighborhood drama to civil rights case faster than Karen could print a violation slip. The HOA board panicked. 2 more members resigned. The HOA's president emailed me directly, saying he was deeply sorry and ashamed of how the board had handled the situation. He asked if I'd consider meeting to discuss peaceful resolution. I forwarded the email to our attorney and replied simply, "I think it's too late for peace. We tried that when we built the ramp." Meanwhile, Karen doubled down, publicly. She gave an interview to a fringe news site claiming we'd orchestrated a cancel campaign, that we were milking the disability narrative, and that the videos were edited to defame an innocent woman just trying to uphold rules. Her smugness, her coldness, it all backfired. The comments lit her up. People found old HOA meeting clips of her shutting down community gardens, yelling about solar panels, and once claiming that holiday inflatables lower property value. She wasn't just wrong about the ramp. She was exposed. Kyle stayed humble through it all. He kept his head down, stuck to his schedule, and remained exactly the kind of man who deserved peace, not pity. He got letters from strangers, veterans, parents of disabled kids, elderly people with mobility needs, all thanking him for being visible. One message read, "Because of you, I stood up to my building manager." Another said, "My mom cried watching your interview. Thank you for making her feel seen." By the time a CNN crew showed up to do a full segment on the ramp that made America pay attention, the tone had shifted. This wasn't just about a neighborhood anymore. This was about how easy it is for bad people to use rules to hide cruelty. Karen, in trying to protect her visual standards, had revealed something much uglier. And now? Now she'd be forced to answer for it, in court, in headlines, and in front of the very public she'd once dismissed as emotional noise. The week the national news aired our story, everything in the neighborhood shifted. Before, Karen was a shadow with a clipboard, a background threat people endured but rarely confronted. Now, she was a punchline, a warning, a meme. The segment showed Kyle navigating the ramp, the historic clip of Karen calling it an eyesore, and snippets of her HOA presentation titled "Preserving Neighborhood Integrity," which now sounded like satire. Anchors didn't even try to hide their disdain. One host ended the story by saying, "Maybe the problem isn't the ramp, it's the people tripping over their own egos." The coverage triggered a tidal wave of fallout. Sponsors who previously supported the HOA's seasonal events pulled funding. The community's 4th of July celebration, once a big neighborhood tradition, was canceled after every vendor backed out. HOA members began resigning en masse. The treasurer, the secretary, and 2 regional reps all submitted their resignations within a week. Only Karen remained, and she held on like a villain in the final act of a movie, refusing to admit the empire was burning around her. She tried to spin it, of course. She hosted a live stream from her kitchen, sitting stiffly in front of an American flag while reading a prepared statement about misinformation, internet mobs, and unregulated digital vengeance. It was a disaster. The audio cut out halfway through. Someone spotted her wine glass labeled HOA Queen, and her cat walked across the keyboard mid-sentence. Twitter had a field day. The video trended under the hashtag #Karen Collapse. The HOA meetings grew tense. At one emergency session, over 60 residents showed up, most for the first time ever. They demanded answers, apologies, and immediate policy reform. Karen tried to maintain control, banging her gavel like it was a weapon. But it didn't work. Greg, a soft-spoken veteran who never liked drama, stood up and said, "We trusted you with leadership. You turned it into a personal vendetta. This isn't about a ramp. It's about respect." People clapped. Others shouted. Karen walked out halfway through the meeting. That was the last time she chaired anything. The final nail in the coffin came when the Department of Housing and Urban Development confirmed their investigation into civil rights violations. They sent representatives to interview us, take photos of the ramp, and review HOA communication logs. Our lawyer handed them a binder so thick it needed 2 rubber bands to stay shut. Karen, when approached by investigators, refused to speak without her attorney, and then filed for a formal reprieve due to psychological distress caused by online harassment. That didn't stop the investigation. It only added a layer of public suspicion. Then came the city council meeting. Residents packed the chamber. Media crews lined the back walls. Kyle spoke first, calm and composed. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for a neighborhood where people like me aren't treated like violations," he said. You could hear a pin drop. He received a standing ovation. When Karen tried to speak, boos drowned her out. She tried appealing to the law. To her, right to protect neighborhood aesthetics. But the damage was done. A vote was held. The HOA's charter would be suspended pending full review. It passed 89-3. Karen fled the meeting in tears. The next day, she was gone. No official statement, no note, just a for sale sign in her yard and a moving truck parked silently at dawn. A neighbor told me she left before sunrise, her car packed tight, refusing to speak to anyone. She'd become a national headline, and not the kind you recover from. One final meme made its rounds, her face overlaid with the caption, "Sued a ramp, got steamrolled." But the story didn't end there. In the wake of Karen's collapse, the community rebuilt. With her gone, the HOA was restructured. Residents who never felt heard were now included. Kyle was asked to consult on new accessibility policies. We held a neighborhood gathering called Access Fest, a barbecue and community forum where people could meet, eat, and talk freely. Someone brought t-shirts that read, "The ramp that broke the rules." Another brought stickers that said, "Access greater than aesthetics." The ramp itself became a landmark. Local students came by to take photos for their civics projects. One girl asked Kyle to sign her yearbook. "My mom says you made our town better," she said. He blinked hard, then smiled. And through it all, we never removed a single screw from that ramp. Karen had tried to erase it. Instead, she became the footnote, and the ramp became the legacy. When the formal hearing date was announced, it didn't feel real. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, backed by a coalition of civil rights attorneys and disability rights advocates, confirmed that our case against the HOA, and by extension Karen, would be reviewed in open court. Not just mediation, not arbitration, a full-blown legal hearing. And not because we demanded it, but because the case had become so visible, so public, so symbolic, that the government decided to make an example out of it. Our lawyer smiled when he told us, "She wanted attention. Now she's going to get it." The courthouse was packed that day. National media outlets lined the steps like it was a celebrity trial. Supporters waved signs, "Access is a right," "Ramp up justice," and "Karen can't climb over federal law." Kyle wore a button-down and a pin that simply said "Independent." I sat beside him at the table while our legal team prepared mountains of documents, photos, and correspondence. Every violation notice, every email, every smirk caught on camera. Karen arrived late. She wore oversized sunglasses flanked by two expensive-looking attorneys and a visible scowl. Her hair was frazzled, her composure cracked. The confident HOA president from before was gone, replaced by a defensive, cornered woman trying to salvage a reputation already swallowed by the internet. The moment she entered, someone in the gallery whispered, "There she is," and the room went silent. The first day of the hearing was all about facts. Our lawyer laid out the timeline. The ramp's permits and full legal compliance, the passive-aggressive notices, the mockery caught on video, Karen's personal cease and desist letter, the HOA's escalation despite federal protection laws. Then came the witnesses. Neighbors testified, some reluctantly at first, but when one brave mother broke down saying, "My daughter uses a walker, and Karen made me hide it for 2 years," the dam burst. Testimonies flooded in. One man described Karen's obsession with HOA control as dictatorship disguised as neighborhood policy. Another said she'd reported his wind chimes for unauthorized acoustic elements. It would have been funny if it wasn't so real. Then came Kyle's turn. He wheeled up to the stand and adjusted the microphone like he'd been doing it all his life. No dramatics, no tears, just the truth. "I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be a symbol. I want to live in a house where my brother doesn't have to explain my humanity every time someone walks by. That ramp isn't political. It's my legs." The judge, who had remained stone-faced the entire time, paused, then nodded. Karen's defense was a disaster. Her lawyers tried arguing that she acted in the best interest of the community, that she had aesthetic standards to uphold, and that any emotional harm was incidental and unintentional. They played the victim card, hard, claimed she was harassed online, suffered emotional trauma, and had lost friends. But when it came time for her to speak directly, she unraveled. She called the whole thing a witch hunt, blamed the media for distorting her word, and most memorably said, "I was just trying to preserve what we had before all this activism moved in." The room gasped. Our lawyer stood and calmly asked her, "You mean before a disabled man needed to get into his house?" Karen didn't answer. The judge had heard enough. In the ruling, he stated that the HOA's actions represented a clear, repeated, and conscious disregard for federal accessibility laws, and that Karen's behavior amounted to targeted discrimination masked by bureaucratic process. He ordered all remaining fines nullified, issued a public apology letter from the HOA board to Kyle, and fined the HOA itself $250,000 in civil damages, most of which would go to accessibility initiatives in the region. Karen was barred from serving on any board tied to housing governance for 5 years. The decision made national news. Headlines read, "Man wins landmark disability case against HOA tyrant. Judge rules in favor of accessibility. The ramp stands." Karen ordered to apologize in court. Internet cheers. That night, our phones didn't stop buzzing. Kyle received messages from people around the world, some in wheelchairs, some not, all of them thanking him. One message stood out. "I've fought my whole life to feel welcome where I live. You made it happen, for all of us." We held a quiet celebration, just friends, neighbors, and some grilled food in the yard. The ramp, washed, polished, and now legally untouchable, was lit up with fairy lights. Someone brought a cake shaped like a ramp. It said, "Justice is a slope." We laughed. Kyle cried. I'll never forget it. Karen, no one's heard from her since the verdict. Her house sold to a family with a son who uses a wheelchair. When they moved in, Kyle rolled over with a welcome basket. He said, "This street knows better now." And he was right. After the court ruling, everything changed, not just in our neighborhood, but in the city, the state, and oddly enough, on the internet. What had started as one woman's obsession with visual standards turned into a full-scale movement. Kyle's ramp, once just a necessity of mobility, was now a symbol of standing firm in the face of ignorance, cruelty, and empty power. The ruling was celebrated, dissected, and shared in civil rights classes, disability forums, and even late-night talk shows. One host held up a picture of the ramp and said, "She tried to cancel a concrete ramp, and it ended her instead." Cue applause. But despite the national attention, we stayed grounded. Kyle kept a low profile. He returned to work part-time at the nonprofit he loved, and I kept our house open to neighbors who wanted to learn more or talk about what happened. Some came to apologize quietly with baked goods and long glances at the ground. Others came to share stories of their own silent battles. Ramps denied, elevators too expensive to maintain, sidewalks deliberately narrowed. What happened here wasn't rare. We were just the ones that lit the match and refused to back down when the smoke got thick. The city issued a formal commendation to Kyle, naming him an honorary advisor to their new accessibility council. He didn't want the attention, but he took the job. He helped them revise outdated zoning codes, ban HOA restrictions on federally protected modifications, and build stronger resources for people filing complaints. A year later, our mayor unveiled a brand new accessibility handbook with Kyle's name printed right on the inside cover. But the most powerful gesture came from the neighborhood itself. After the HOA dissolved, the remaining residents, now free from Karen's grip, banded together to form a new kind of committee. No titles, no fines. Just residents helping residents. One of their first acts, commissioning a new ramp, not because Kyle needed one, but because they wanted to honor what it stood for. Made from carved stone and granite, etched into the side was a single line. "Access is not a compromise, it's a right." They built it in front of the local community center, the same place Karen once tried to ban excessive lawn chairs. The ramp led up to a small outdoor gathering area with benches and trees. Kyle and I were invited to the dedication ceremony. Dozens of families came. Kids played. A brass plaque read, "Dedicated to everyone who had to fight just to enter." Kyle rolled up the new ramp, turned around and said to the crowd, "Now no one has to ask for permission." People clapped. Some cried. I just stood there, heart full, watching my brother reclaim space. Not just physically, but symbolically. And that original ramp? Still there, stronger than ever. We added a garden next to it, filled with Kyle's favorite, lavender. It attracts bees and butterflies, and during summer, a steady stream of compliments. Visitors still stop and ask, "Is this the ramp?" We nod. Sometimes they ask to take pictures. Sometimes they just touch the rail and say thank you. Karen? She vanished. Her house sold to a family of 4. The new owner is a retired firefighter who, ironically, installed a second ramp on the back patio for his elderly dog. Can't have him struggling, he said. Kyle gave him a fist bump. What Karen didn't realize, and probably still doesn't, is that the ramp was never the problem. It was her refusal to see it as part of the home, part of the family, part of life. She wanted conformity. What she got was change. What she feared the most, visibility, disruption, progress, became the very thing she's remembered for. And now, wherever she is, she has to live with that. We, on the other hand, get to live here, surrounded by neighbors who know better, supported by laws that finally have teeth, and protected by a ramp that no one will ever dare call an eyesore again. Kyle told me once, I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to roll into my house without a fight. Now he rolls in with pride. And when he does, that ramp, solid, permanent, unshakable, greets him like a monument to every